feel free to snap on 2 and 4. Only on 2 and 4. Happiness is contagious, and a smile just seems to spread. So wipe that frown right off of your face, just call that look of dread. Because a smile, they say, will travel miles and miles a day. Like a ripple, like Kevin Bacon, it goes several steps away. So won't you smile like the Mona Lisa? Smile like a sleeping cat. They say the misery loves company, but who needs friends like that? Temporary, we can't turn back the dial. The joy is in the journey, the secret's in the style. This old keeps spinning, so just enjoy the ride. Remember that nobody gets out of here alive. So won't you smile like the Mona Lisa? Smile like a sleeping cat. They say the misery loves company, but who needs friends like that? Who needs friends like that? Who needs friends like that?
Hey, thank you, Jeannie. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jonathan and Matt, thank you so much. All right. So, smile. Decide to be happy. This sounds lovely Pollyannish, doesn't it? Oh, is that like that old have a nice day? Like, and then it became that rote thing, have a nice day. Have a nice day. Decide to be happy. Well, you'll notice that in this title, Decide to Be Happy, B is capitalized. Decide to be happy. And when we talk about happiness, one of the things that for many people, the very first thing they have to go to or think about is, do I deserve it? A lot of people don't feel necessarily that they deserve to be happy. They feel like we often feel like, I know for years I felt like I had to pay a tax on my happiness, and the tax was how much I worried. That was the tax I paid on my happiness. And we can do a lot of work about being happy, about creating more abundance, about a healthier relationship. We think that if we get a job or this or that, we're going to be happier. And all of those things may be true, but that really causes us to deal with the notion of happiness from a material or psychological level. If I think that getting something is going to make me happy, do you see that my happiness is outside of myself? And if I get it, I'm happy, and if I don't get it, I'm not happy. If I am focusing on my past or my trigger points or my shadow or all those kinds of things, I am focusing on the psychological realm, which in and of itself is not a bad thing. But when we talk about decide to be happy, we actually are moving this conversation to a spiritual place, to stand on a spiritual ground. So that deciding to be happy has nothing to do with whether or not we get something, and it really doesn't even have to do with whether or not we've cleaned out some old nonsense thinking. It has everything to do with, do we know who we are? decide to be, capital B-E, happy, is deciding to stand in the spiritual truth of who we are. We think about spirit, God, great spirit, the force, whatever we might call it. We can't actually imagine it being unhappy, can we? It just is. It is, and it's forever expressing. And we recognize that it has a profound sense of love and givingness to it. But I don't think spirit worries about being happy. I think it just is happy. We often use the term joy to really grab a hold of that quality, that state that is simply being the truth, being happy, being the presence of the divine. So when we decide to be happy, the very first thing we have to think about is, with what or with whom are we identifying ourselves? Are we identifying ourselves with that job or that relationship or that thing that we are or aren't getting? Do you see? Then that impacts our happiness. Are we identifying ourselves with that old psychological thought, or, I'm an Aries, so, that's just how we are, or, right, or whatever it is. Are we identifying with that? And then we are unhappy or happy, depending on if we like it or not, or it's working or not. But when we identify with the spiritual truth of who we are identifying with that divine presence. Spirit is already that. So I really want to hammer this home just a little bit. When we talked last week, we talked about I am pure intelligence. Not I am intellect, not I am intelligent like my IQ, but I am pure intelligence. I am the intelligence of the universe, acting through my heart and mind in alignment, right? We talked about that last week. And then we closed with the I am consciousness. I am consciousness. And I had a woman come up to me after the service, and she asked me, okay, I'm having a little trouble with this. I'm not quite getting it. So I am my consciousness. But isn't my consciousness like one of the places where all that crappy stuff is happening? And isn't it my consciousness that's getting me in trouble, and particularly my subconsciousness that's a problem? So I'm not really getting this. And I said, okay, but when we said it, we didn't use the word my, did we? It's not I am my consciousness. I am consciousness. Just like I am intellect. I am the intelligence of the universe. So when we say that, when you say that I am consciousness, it's not I am my consciousness, my limited human consciousness, my limited human ideas filled with these subjective thoughts. I am consciousness. I am life. I am that divine presence as me, as you. This is the identity that we want to really get a hold of. This is the place that we stand. This is the place we start with our conversation about happiness. So then the question is defining happiness. And I don't know how many of you remember Born Free, right? Elsie, and she was then finally released back into the wild. And this is a photograph years later. The young men that raised her, they went back into the wild to see if she would remember. And this was the result. And at first she came bounding up, and there was a moment of, So what is happiness? What is happiness? It's not necessarily that this particular thing is going well, or I've gotten this particular thing, or Happiness, Raymond Charles Barker suggests, is a genuine satisfaction with our present experience. A joy in life. A genuine satisfaction with our present experience. We talk about this a lot, be present in the moment. It's not about the regrets of the past. It's not about the worry about the future, or the then I'll be happy, when I get the job, when I get the girl, when I get the money, when I get the healing, when I get then I'll be happy, right? Or living in the past and the regrets about all of that. It's living in the present moment. and being the truth of our being in that present moment and experiencing it with satisfaction. Now, we discover satisfaction when we pay attention to our lives. Now, I noticed that as I was preparing for this talk this week that I thought, yeah, right, we're going to stand up there and we're going to talk about be happy, be happy. And then you go to the newspaper, right? You go to the newspaper. And we had the hostages and the terrorism in France, and before that, we've had shootings in schools. We have white police officers shooting young black men. We have black men shooting police officers. We have drive-by shootings at a fire department in Florida. You may have read about these things, read about all these things, and we're going to stand up here and say, "Oh, be happy." This is not what we're talking about. It's about what are we going to pay attention to? As many of you know, my son is a firefighter. He's 23. He's gotten his first real career job as a firefighter. He's no longer in a little podunk fire department where, half of them were volunteers. They have the biggest truck ladder in this area, and he's very excited about that. It's all, boys and their toys, right? And so I had a lovely time with him and his girlfriend on Christmas Eve. He came a little early, and I got a fierce, fierce hug from him. And what's going on, honey? We need to talk. Okay, so we sat down. And he looked at me and he said, "Mom, I don't understand. When did we become the enemy?" He said, "I became a firefighter because I believe firefighters are heroes, and I want to be of service." And he told me about the shooting that had happened, the drive-by in Florida, and public servants and being targeted. And they're trained. They're trained to not only be on the lookout, but to assume that there's a potential problem. And he found himself very conflicted. It's Christmas Eve. He was coming here to our Christmas Eve service to talk about love and light. And he is finding his way in a Christian path, and he's very much into his guns and didn't quite know what to do. So we had quite the conversation. And I said, we've had some beautiful conversations here. We had a conversation after Trayvon Martin, after Michael Brown. We've had some diversity conversations. I've had some really amazing conversations with him over this last year. I've traveled all over the world. And I said, I'll tell you what, this is the only thing that I know. I think you're right. I think that 10 or 15, okay, let's make it really bad. Let's assume 20% of the people really are insane. Really. What are they thinking? Really, they think shooting each other is going to somehow solve things. It's insane. So let's just say 20% of the people are insane. Okay, let's just agree on that. That means 80% are not. 80% are like you and me, trying to get by, trying to have a nice life, trying to share love, trying to have a family, trying to figure it out, wanting to just be themselves. And you know what? I refuse to let those 20% have power over my life. I will not be in fear. I will not be in fear, and I will not assume that the people that I meet are like those 20%. I simply won't do it. I won't do it. We had to breathe together over that for a moment. That was what I had to offer him that night. To decide. Do you see? We get to decide what we're going to pay attention to. We can decide to pay attention to the 20% of crazy people out there I get it. I'm making a judgment. I'm doing that for, for a reason. But we can decide to be focused on that. We can decide to be focused on the news and all of that. We can decide to feel like we need to protect ourselves or become fearful or whatever. Or we can decide to stand in the spiritual truth of who we are, to see that spiritual truth in others to the very best of our ability, and therefore decide to be happy. And really decide that the truth is 80% of the people on the planet we're all trying to do exactly the same thing. We may be doing it differently, but we're all trying to walk a life of a happy, healthy, productive, joyous life filled with love. That's the decision we have. What are we going to pay attention to? So our first decision in deciding to be happy, our first thing is to pay attention to what we are identifying with. The second thing is to pay attention to what we are paying attention to. So he writes this in the beginning of the chapter, Decide to Be Happy. He, by the way, being Raymond Charles Barker, our book, The Power of Decision for the month. Unhappy people think they know why they are unhappy. The number of unhappy people I've listened to and counseled with is legion. Their explanation of the many causes of their unhappiness is usually incorrect. They do not see themselves correctly. Their disturbed emotions distort their reasoning capacity. They want to change events, situations, conditions, and people in their individual worlds. They do not want to change themselves. They want a rearrangement of facts and dodge the concept of a rearrangement of ideas within their own consciousness. You see, when we are paying attention to what we're thinking, what's going on here, we begin to have the opportunity to decide, what are we going to think? What are we going to pay attention to? Now, it is the change of ideas in consciousness, the standing in this new place, that is our decision to be happy. It is not pretending not to be unhappy. It's not plastering a smile on our face. It's not deciding to be happy with a capital B-E is different than pretending not to be unhappy. Do you see? So it's not being in denial of what's going on. It's not plastering the smile on our face. It's deciding where we're going to stand. It's deciding what we're going to pay attention to. What are we going to be thinking about? It's an inside job, not working for something else to make me happy, but to find that happiness within myself, within yourself, within the very truth of our own beings. Now, I didn't always want to do this inside job. I didn't like this notion. Charles Barker says this: a changed experience can only happen to a changed individual. Well, why can't you change? Why does it have to be me? I can remember when I first started practicing science of mind, and I really thought I was getting very spiritual. And then I would have something happen, and then I would have to be spiritual. And then I'd have to be really spiritual, and then I'd be mad. Why can't you be spiritual for a while and let me have the temper tantrum? How is this fair? Oh, wait, because I want to have a changed experience in my own life, right? This has been brought forcibly home to me. Well, I guess the distance I have traveled, I can remember in my first community in the Northwest, you really have no idea what things people will say to ministers, particularly complain about in terms of the minister or the community or what we're doing or not doing or should be doing or could be doing or aren't doing right. And it's particularly interesting when it comes as an anonymous letter. Now, I should tell you right up front, if it comes as an anonymous letter, I don't do anything about it. I don't do anything about it if it comes to me third party either. I'm utterly uninterested. If you have something to speak, if you have something going on, please just speak frankly and freely, directly. But I can remember getting those letters when I was first in a minister. I was very young. I didn't really have a clue as to what I was doing. I was not particularly well trained, and I was not particularly spiritually grounded. And man, I can remember the first time I got one of those letters. I went to bed for 3 days. Really. I was devastated. Absolutely devastated. Why? Because I took it personally. And I believed that something about who I was being said. And I paid attention to every word. And I read it over and over and over again. And then I had made up all the reasons why it wasn't true in my mind. And I said them over and over and over again in the shower and laying in the bed. Of course, the person, whoever wrote it to me, was actually not there. But I spent an enormous amount of time on that. So, you know, this happens on a regular basis, somewhat regular, not too often. Every 3 years, I get a good, solid one. And so not too long ago came again, nice anonymous email, and it was not pretty at all. And I read it. It was actually Reverend Karen's first experience of having this kind of email, and off she went. And I said, oh, I recognize that. And I said, here, let me show you what we do about this. Delete. It's like, oh, no, really. And I mean, but we have to learn this, right? We have to learn this. And I had to learn this through painful experience. Why? Because I would identify with that, and it didn't make me happy, and those people clearly weren't happy with me, and I wanted them to be happy. I just want people to be happy. Of course, it's clearly, obviously, my responsibility that you're happy. Hello? Right? Or why can't you just figure it out and I can be, I'll just have the temper tantrum today. I think I'll write the email today. Right? But that so totally doesn't align with the spiritual being that we're wanting to become, does it? And we know it's not who we are, and we know it's not who we want to be. So we have to want to be different. We have to have the desire to see it differently, to find that different place to stand, to identify with something different, to stop telling the story over and over and over again, to pay attention to something different. We have to have the desire to change ourselves, not everything and everybody else around us. Now, Raymond Charles Barker, he says a very interesting thing. He says there's one really significant reason why we're unhappy. I think this is specifically a first world problem, primarily in the United States. And he says it's beware of boredom. Boredom, static routine, depression, and complaining. We are the wealthiest country in the world. We use up, 75% of all the resources, and we are the most depressed country in the world. And, oh man, have you read Facebook and some of the complaining that goes on? It's like, wow, that is very, very, very intense. But the big issue is boredom. Boredom. The static routine. Nothing new, nothing creative, nothing going on in our worlds and also up here. Rehashing, going over. So he writes this. If you haven't gotten this book, man, you have to run to the bookstore. He just is like, I read this and I go, bam, bam, bam. Okay. So this is one of those. Think back to the days of hand-cranked phonographs that played only one record at a time. You do not have to raise your hand if you recognize this analogy. The records could only be played 100 times before they became scratchy and lost their clarity. Many people's minds are like the old phonograph with its records. They play the same old thinking over and over. They review the past in order to avoid the present. You hear them talk about the same old things whenever you are around them. They rethink rather than think. They are bored, but not restless. They complain, but make no effort to rectify their situation. Round and round the old record goes in their consciousness, spreading mental bacteria and hastening the aging process. These people look tired and old no matter what their actual ages may be. Yeah, oh wow, is right. So I can remember, I'm sure many of you can, I can remember my mother saying, you know, in the summer, shoo, go outside, don't come back till lunchtime, don't come back till dinner. I made a point of finding a place to live when Jason was really little where I could do that. And, you know, the 3 days after school is over, I'm so bored. What is there to do? I'm so bored. Well, let's see. You could clean the bathroom. You could rake the leaves. I can find lots of things for you to do. I'm busy, Mom. 3 weeks later, I'm so bored. So I would talk to Jason and his friends about creative boredom. I said, this is good. You will get so bored, you'll actually do something new. You'll find something new to do. And they would eventually do archaeological digs in the ditch out back, and they would make we made a giant pirate ship out of a refrigerator box one time, and, you know, these amazing Lego things. And they got so creative because I allowed them to be bored, but I kept reminding them that they didn't have to be stuck in their boredom. That's what we have to do with ourselves. When we find ourselves sort of in that go to work, go home, make dinner, pay bills, go to work, go home, that rat race, that thing, our job is to find something new. Now, we think about this, oh, I love this, so I love this. Choose your rut carefully, you'll be in it for the next 60 miles, 60 years. Our previous music director and I, we used to tease, we're rut dwellers. I'm definitely a rut dweller. Not only am I a rut dweller, I go in there and I decorate. It's true, it's true, it's true. It's annoying. I don't go to restaurants, I go to the same dish at that restaurant every time. It's very annoying. And I really have to work at, could we just do something new for a change? And so the paradox here is to have the freedom of creativity and newness. Actually, I have to be disciplined to break out of my rut. I have to discipline myself not to do the easy thing. I'll do it the way I've always done it. Go home the same way, eat the same thing, buy the same thing, do the same thing, have the same thoughts. You see, that's very easy to do. That's why it's called a habit. And it takes discipline to break a habit, to get out of the rut. And so there's that paradox that discipline actually creates freedom. But we have to have the discipline to think differently, do differently, allow ourselves to be differently, to stand in that different place that says, wait, I am consciousness. I am intelligence in this moment. What do I choose to pay attention to? What do I want to bring forward? What do I need to do to help bring that forward? I love this. Raymond Charles Barker says, the feeling that it's great to be alive is a spiritual necessity. Yes. Isn't that beautiful? So I love this. I've actually been cogitating on this for quite a while, and I allowed myself to get pretty run down over the holidays. It's a pattern that I am seeking, quite frankly, to break. Got so bad that in the end of the year, at the beginning of the year, I got bronchitis, and so that was not good. And so I'm feeling much better today. But this whole week, every morning, I've been waking up, and you know what I've been doing? I've been laying in bed thinking, how do I feel today? And waiting to see what would happen. How many of us wake up like that? Oh, and we wait to see what starts to flood our minds. What if I simply woke up, which I did this morning, I woke up, and rather than waiting to see how I felt, I decided to be happy and feel good. Yeah, and I thought, oh gosh, I teach this stuff. I should really practice it. But it's true. Think about it. How often do we wait to see how we're doing? Let's wait to see how we're doing. I don't know what, on all the various things we can wait on. But you see, they teach it in The Secret, and Ernest Holmes talks about it in the paragraph that we're going to be doing in the Science of Mind class next week. It's what we pay attention to. Wake up in the morning and decide what kind of day we're going to have. We're going to decide it's a good day. We're going to decide we're going to be happy with it. We're going to decide to move through it. We're going to decide that we are actually spirit showing up in the world, and it will be good. Another way to pay attention to this is, first of all, just pay attention to what you do as you are waking up. Just pay attention, because there's a decision available to you there. The other thing is to pay attention to where your brain goes when you're sitting at a red light. Where does your brain go when you're on idle? You're waiting for something. Just notice. Do you start rehearsing the story? Do you start having a conversation with that person you're mad at? Do you start listing all of the things that are not right? Do you start, where do you go? You can do your spiritual mind treatments, your mantras, your affirmations so much that when you go on idle, that's where your brain goes. When I take a power nap, or I feel like I just need to take a moment to take a break, and I just take a moment and rest, instantly my brain goes to the first 2 steps of treatment. There's only one life, one power, one presence, or goes to the mantra, there's only one life, that life is God's life. I have said those for so long. I actually believe them to be true. And that is the habit of my brain. Do you see? That's the discipline. The discipline that we have to tell our brains where we want it to go, so that we have this great feeling of being alive. So you might ask yourself this week, where do you feel most alive? How much of your life are you spending feeling alive? And is it enough? Abraham Lincoln says people are just about as happy as they make up their minds to be. And we can hear that if we will pay attention to where our brain goes on idle, what we're thinking about, paying attention to when we wake up in the morning. So you decide. Deciding to be happy has nothing to do with denial or pretense. Doesn't have anything to do with either one of those things. Deciding to be happy is identifying with the truth of our being, with spirit, with consciousness, with the pure intelligence, identifying with that, not with the limited human experience. It is paying attention to the 80% of stuff that really is actually going well, going right, going good. It is the desire to be different in our own lives and the discipline to behave and think differently. We started out with, decide to be happy. Do you deserve it? I think the more important question is, decide to be happy. Are you willing to give up your right to be unhappy? I heard that from a very dear friend of mine years ago, and a pretty significant tragedy, not long extended tragedy, and and at one point this person said, if I'm ever going to be happy, I'm going to have to give up my right to be unhappy. We sometimes do have those experiences, and even then we are still at choice. So I want to close our treatment with this affirmation. There are fabulous affirmations in this book, little mini treatments you can say out loud, we can say together. So this is going to be our treatment for today. And so I'm going to actually invite you to say it out loud with me. There is one mind, God, infinite good. This good includes all that I am. Therefore, it includes every idea that I need to be happy and creative. These divine ideas are right now functioning in my consciousness. I am open and receptive to new ideas. There are no false ideas that I am unworthy. I am a spiritual being, an individualization of life itself, and so it is.